Hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll be getting started at the top of the hour. We're happy you can be here today. Welcome. We'll get started in just 1 minute. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're excited to be introducing everyone to Libby. Sorry to folks, I didn't mute on that one. I forget how loud metal straw in a metal cup is. Clanking around. All right. Excellent. And it looks like we are just about all ready to go here. Of course, people will still be able to join in, but I'll get us started now that we're at 10 o'clock. So welcome. Thank you for joining us for the Learning Libby with the Experts webinar. This morning, we are so excited to get to talk to you about the library reading app, Libby. We're going to start off with the basics, everything you need to know for your day-to-day life, and really to get the most out of the app. We'll take a 5-minute break in the middle. This will give you a chance to get up and stretch, or if you want to stick with us, you can take our mini quiz and test what you learned. We'll wrap up the morning with our tips and tricks session, where we'll take a deeper dive into 4 of our favorite Libby features. I like to consider this session the kind of cherry on top of the sundae. It's, things that will really add to your experience, but if you have to hop off early for any reason, no worries. That they're not going to impact your day-to-day life. All right, before we dive in, we should probably introduce ourselves. My name is Joe. I'm here from Overdrive. So Overdrive is the makers of the Libby app, and you may have heard of or used our flagship Overdrive app in the past. But since the Overdrive app is retiring, we're super excited to get to share Libby with everyone today. At Overdrive, I'm a part of the digital bookmobile team. So we have a truck that goes across the US and Canada, helping people get started with Libby, just like yourselves, like we're doing here virtually. Now I'm joined with the other half of the bookmobile team.
Hello there. Good morning. My name is Marissa. I always give Joe a hard time and say that he has the boring half of our job. So he typically hangs back in Cleveland, where Overdrive is headquartered, and does like all the desk work. So the budget and planning our tour and things like that. And I get the fun half of our job, which is traveling with our digital bookmobile during non-COVID times and helping library patrons just like you learn how to use Libby. So in my 3 years at Overdrive, I've helped thousands of people learn how to use Libby, whether it's the very basics, which we're going to talk about in our first session, as Joe said, or helping experienced user learn the tips and tricks, which we're going to follow in our second session. So we're really excited to be here today.
Definitely excited to be here, and thank you all once again for joining us. Now, as Marissa mentioned, I do have the boring stuff, so I'll try to get through it as painlessly as possible. We do have closed captions enabled for this webinar, and they should be on automatically. You're probably seeing them at the bottom of your screen. If you need to adjust those or turn those off, you can do that using the button that says CC in those Zoom meeting controls, and you can adjust those closed captions. You can also ask Marissa and I questions throughout the entire webinar. You can do that using, in that same meeting controls, there's a box that says Q&A, and use that Q&A feature. If one of us is talking or presenting, the other will be responding. So send those through and we'll get to you as quickly as we can. You also have the option to ask questions anonymously if that makes you more comfortable. Now, we are recording our session this morning, and we do this for a few reasons. We like to make sure that if anyone needs to see something again or review any of the info that we covered, they have the option to do that. So, of course, you can review the entire recorded webinar. But also, since we're recording, if you have any distractions that pop up, if you need to hop off early for any reason, or if you just want to stick around for the basics and do the tips and tricks on your own time on another day, you also have the ability to do that. So we don't want anyone to leave overwhelmed, which is another great reason to record. So you'll get an email tomorrow morning from Zoom that includes a link to that full webinar recording, as well as a link to our Getting Started with Libby PDF, which includes short video clips on everything we cover in the basics portion. So if you just need to see one thing again quickly, you can do that. Since we are recording and providing these follow-up materials, we recommend that you watch us as we go through the basics and don't try to follow along on your device. Just, ask questions and try it out once we hit that 5-minute break. Help us improve this webinar by filling out our survey. It will pop up whenever you leave. And then we'll be connecting iPads into the webinar. When we do this, sometimes Zoom shrinks the screen. And since we're going to be on iPad minis, that can make it pretty tiny. We don't want you to miss anything. You need to see Libby in her full glory. And thankfully, it's only a few quick clicks to adjust that. We'll send that out in the chat anytime Marissa or I connect in. All right, we got through the boring stuff. Let me take a second here and get my iPad connected in, and I will show everyone the download and sign in process. So downloading the Libby app and getting signed in for the very first time. Now, I mentioned Marissa and I are both using iPads, but you can download the Libby app onto any kind of mobile device, like an Apple mobile device, so iPhones and iPads, or an Android mobile device like your smartphones and tablets. There are so many Android brands, I couldn't list them all, but think like Samsung or Google Pixel or anything like that. If you want to use Libby on a computer, there isn't an app or a program to download for Windows or for Apple. You just go to libbyapp.com in your browser. Now, whether you're using the app or the website, everything will look pretty much exactly the same once we're in Libby. So that makes it still great for everyone to attend this. All right, I'm all connected. So let's start by downloading our app. If you are on an Apple device, you'll head into your blue App Store icon. If you're on an Android device, you'll head into the Google Play Store. Once we're in, we'll go and tap on our search bar. And then I like to just type in Libby and ignore any of the suggestions that pop up. I just hit search or enter in my keyboard, because when I do this, Libby is going to be one of the top results that pops up. We can see she's right here, front and center. We're looking for Libby by Overdrive, this maroon app icon with Libby reading her book. Now on your screen, you'll see either get or install, and you can just tap that and let that app download. Libby is completely free to download and use. You just need the free app and a library card, so no worries about charges or anything like that. You might be prompted to sign into the App Store based on your device settings, but just have those passwords handy and know there is zero cost to use Libby. And once that app is all downloaded, you can leave the App Store and head over and find that freshly downloaded Libby app on your screen. Now, when we open Libby for the very first time, she'll have a few questions for us to help us find our library and get signed in with our library card. You'll only need to do these steps the very first time you set up a device, and then going forward, Libby will remember your info so you can just jump right back into your book. So our first question here, do you have a library card? I'll say yes. And now we need to find our library. Now, the first time you set up a device, I'm going to ask you to use search for a library. That's my favorite. But I just wanted to give you a quick tip. If you have multiple devices, maybe you have 2 or 3 devices you want to use Libby on, after you get that first one set up, When you go to set up your second device, you can use copy from my other device, and it's a nice shortcut. It'll pull all of your info in. So you only have to do this longer process the first time with your primary device. All right, let's wrap up our sign in. I'll tap on search for a library, and then we'll come up to this box here. And I'm just going to type in the zip code. And there we go. I am looking right here. So my card today is from Waterford Public Library. And that's great. You might see your branch name or the physical location you go to listed here. But just know there are a total of 48 branches that share one digital library. And that name is up here. So y'all should be looking for Library Connection Inc. This is your digital. It doesn't necessarily matter what physical location you go to. If it is a part of this digital collection, you all share it. So we'll tap on this box to choose Library Connection. And then we're almost done. We'll just tap on sign in with my card. And then this is where I try to talk and type at the same time. So first we have to confirm our branch. This is where you go matters a little bit more. I'll tap on Waterford to choose it. And now I'll tap into this box that says card number, and I'm just going to type in my library card number. It will appear usually under a barcode. Just type in that entire number, no dashes, no spaces. And as long as I type it in correctly, we should have no problems. Once I've got that card number in, I'll tap on sign in. And there we go. I typed it in right. So with that, I've got my card here on the screen. And now I know I can borrow up to 10 digital items at a time, and I can place a hold on up to 10. We'll tap on next. And now we have access to your library's complete collection of ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, and more. Now that wraps up the download and sign in process. This is where I get to hand things over to Marissa. She is going to take you through those basics like we promised, everything from searching and finding books to borrowing and placing holds, and then a little bit more after that. Marissa is using a demo library from Overdrive this morning. We do this just so we don't borrow anything you might be waiting for. And for some reason, my Zoom isn't letting Marissa share. Give me 1 second. There we go. Try it again, Marissa. Even the experts, sometimes technology will get us too. So Marissa's going to be using that demo library. Everything functions exactly the same no matter what library you're in. So the buttons will all work the same. You just will see some different logos and some different collections on the screen. Now I'm going to hand the mic over to Marissa. Remember, if you have any questions, I'll be hanging out in the Q&A. Feel free to send those there.
All right, thank you, Joe. So before I dive into everything that Libby has to offer in our Getting Started session, I do want to point out that Zoom ratio again. So at the bottom of my screen right now, you should see a navigation bar, and it has 5 icons within it: search, library, menu, shelf, and timeline. If your closed captions are blocking that, then you can drag them across your screen with your finger or your mouse and move them around, or you can turn those off. But then also, if you can't see that navigation bar at all, regardless of the closed captions, then Joe is going to put out the instructions for how to change your Zoom ratio. And it's just a couple of clicks to resize your screen. It will allow you to follow along so much easier with me as I go through our Getting Started steps here. So just keep that in mind and resize your screen if needed. I am going to talk about all of those icons at some point in the presentation, but we're going to start out with the library icon. It's the second one that you should see there in the navigation bar. And the library icon is what you're going to tap on when you want to browse your library's entire collection of ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines. Now, I use the word browse when I talk about the library icon because it's a lot like if you were to walk into the physical library, not knowing what you're looking for, and you're browsing across the shelves and seeing if a book sparks interest. It just jumps out at you from the title or the cover. You are looking at everything that the library has to offer here. So as we browse around the library, up at the top of the screen, you'll see some filters. These filters are a great place to start when you're browsing your library's collection. If you tap on Just Added, you'll be presented with a list of titles that are new to your library's collection. Available now is going to be a list of titles that currently don't have a waiting list. So really great for avid readers who are constantly reading and have a lot of holds and you want something that is available right away so you can read right now. And then the last one here is subjects. And that is a really great place to start if you are in any way a subject or genre reader. So if you're someone who really likes romance or historical fiction or biographies, you could tap into subjects and then choose from those subjects on what subject you'd like to browse by. So one of our most popular ways to look for a book. Now, in addition to those filters up at the top, as you make your way down the screen, you're going to see a section that's labeled Guides. Guides do differ from library to library, so yours aren't going to look exactly like mine do, but you do have a kids and teens guide, you also have a magazines guide, and then you have a mystery thriller guide. So what these guides do is point you in the direction of certain content based on a specific criteria, whether that's age group, format like magazine, or genre/subject like mystery or thriller. It's just so the library can get you looking at that content nice and fast. So if I were to tap into the kids guide, then I will see juvenile content and curated collections surrounding that juvenile content, like read-along titles or kids magazines. Ooh, my pinky hit the screen because I talk with my hands. All right, there we go. So we have those filters and then we have those guides on the library page. Now, as I continue scrolling down the screen, this is when you're going to start to see general curated collections that are put together by your library. So these collections are a lot like if you were to walk around the physical library and in the summer, you'll see an end cap that's displaying beach reads. And then in the winter, you go back and that end cap has switched over to cozy mysteries or holiday recipe guides. These curated collections are going to change throughout the year. The library is always rotating them so that they can show us stuff that is fresh and new to spark our interest. So like I said, I use the word browse when I talk about that library icon because you're seeing everything the library has to offer here. You are just seeing if something, piques your interest, sparks your interest. You don't know exactly what you're looking for. In the instances where you do know exactly what you're looking for, maybe you have a particular title in mind, maybe you have a specific author you want to search for, that's when you're going to tap on that first icon instead. That search icon, it looks like a little magnifying glass there. And that magnifying glass is what you're going to tap on when you want to find something specific. So you can type in the search bar a title, an author, a magazine, or series name. So we have a couple options there for you. I'm going to go ahead and search for the book Still Life. So I've typed in my title here, and now I'm going to go ahead and tap on search. Except that didn't do what I wanted it to do because I don't see the ebook, and it might be because I have a preference set. No. Okay. I'm going to switch what book I search for. Sorry about that. That's so weird. I just did that earlier before our presentation, and it came up, so someone might have borrowed it. Okay, so I'm going to type in shipped instead, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to tap on search in my device's keyboard. There we go. So what I wanted when I searched for that first book was for both the ebook and the audiobook version to show up. So I do want to point out that you do have to borrow books in the specific format that you want to enjoy those in. So libraries do purchase those formats separately, and that means you can't borrow an audiobook and then switch it over into an ebook. You have to borrow it in the ebook to be able to read it. So when you're looking for an audiobook, you'll be on the lookout for a pair of headphones. It'll also say the duration of the audiobook as well. And then the jacket cover is going to be a square, kind of like a CD case is a nice way a lot of people remember that that's an audiobook as well. If you're looking for an ebook instead, you can go ahead and look for a rectangular jacket cover. So kind of shaped like a book. That is going to be an indicator that you'll read that book instead. Now I'm going to refresh my page because Joe just did me a favor and borrowed the audiobook, because there's one other thing I wanted to show you, and that Ruth Ware title threw me off. So one moment here. All right. Thank you for going ahead and doing that, Joe. The other thing I wanted to show you here on this page was the difference between titles that are available to borrow and titles that you'll have to place a hold on. So you'll see the audiobook version says place hold right next to this jacket cover. That means that there's currently a waiting list. There's someone reading every copy that the library owns. In this instance, it's Joe, who just borrowed it on his personal device for me. So I'm going to join the waiting list here by tapping place hold. And then on this confirmation page here, you will get a little indicator at the bottom that shows you approximately how long that title is going to take to get to you. So once you decide you want to place that hold for sure, you can confirm by tapping this big maroon button here. And Libby will confirm that you've placed the hold on the book. And then she's going to give us a few options for what to do next. Now, I generally keep browsing when I place holds because I haven't found a book to read yet. So I'm going to go ahead, tap on keep browsing here. And now we can see that that book is on my hold shelf. Now, borrowing a book is just as easy. You'll see if it's available to borrow, it will say borrow right next to that jacket cover. And if you know that this is a book that you want to borrow, you can go ahead and tap this button here. But let's say, a friend who has had some sketchy recommendations in the past is recommending this book, and we want to make sure it is up our alley. What we can do is tap on the jacket cover itself, and that will take us to the details page. So we'll get to read that back jacket cover information. And if we decide, yes, this is a good recommendation, I'll go ahead and borrow it, then we can tap on the borrow button right underneath that jacket cover on this page as well. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to tap on borrow. And now we're on the borrowing confirmation page. Up at the top here, you'll notice we're borrowing ship for 21 days. 21 days is the default lending period at your library, and titles do return automatically on their due date. So you never have to worry about late fees or anything like that. The library will just take that book back automatically and you'll be good to go. So once you would like to confirm that you want to borrow this book, you'll tap that big maroon button just like we did when we placed a hold. And now Libby's downloading the title for offline use. So Libby downloads titles for offline use automatically when you're on Wi-Fi. And once you get this little library card with the check mark on it, that means you no longer have to be on Wi-Fi or use cellular data to open and access your book. That means it works in airplane mode, out in the middle of the woods without any cell service. You'll still be able to enjoy your read. Now, our book is downloaded, so I'm going to go ahead and tap on Open Book here. And now Libby's asking me if I want to read directly in the Libby app or if I would prefer to read on a Kindle device. So if you do have a Kindle device at home that you like to read on, like a Kindle Paperwhite, then you can select Kindle here. You will be prompted to sign into your Amazon account. And then there's going to be a button that says Get Library Book. It's really nice and big and obvious, so it's not hard to find. And you can deliver the ebook to your Kindle so you can read it there. I don't show you these steps live because it requires me to sign into my Amazon account, but I do have a video included in our PDF that shows these steps if you would like to see those. And like I said, it's a couple of clicks. It's really, really simple. You could probably figure it out without the video, but if you need it, you're welcome to watch that video in the PDF. Here live, I'm going to open this book up in the Libby app so that I can show you a few of Libby's key reading features here. So when you open an ebook, you're going to have menus up at the top and the bottom of the screen. We're counting pages right now, but we will be able to see our reading progress here as well. So I'm on page 1 of 417. To drop those menus out of the way so that we can begin reading, all you have to do is quickly tap in the very center of the screen and you'll see those menus disappear. Now we can tap or swipe on the right side of the screen, and that's going to page us forward. Now I'm going to get quickly through here. And what's really great about reading digitally is that you can customize your reading experience to meet your own individual needs. So let's show you how to go ahead and do that. I'm going to tap on the center of the screen. Our menus came back up. And now up at the top right-hand corner, you'll see a icon. That A stands for appearance. So anytime you want to change your reading appearance, you can tap on that A icon. Within your appearance menu, there are 3 different things that you can customize. The first is going to be your text scale. So you can use this slider here to increase or decrease that font size. Next, we have text scale, lighting. I'm currently in bright mode. That is Libby's default, but you can switch it over to sepia or this dark mode if you like to read at night and don't want that bright screen in your eyes. This is a good option for you. And then last but not least, we have book design. Now, book design is just Libby's fancy way of saying font style. So these are the different font styles that you could put the text into. I always like to point out this open dyslexic font here because it may help some readers with dyslexia while reading. Now, I am going to put that last one back to my default as I did with the text scale and lighting. And the reason I change these and then put them back to my default is because these settings are sticky. And what I mean by sticky settings is that Libby remembers your customization settings and will then deliver titles to you with those customizations in place thereafter. So you don't have to come in every time you borrow an ebook and readjust your text size or readjust your font style. Libby will remember that for you and make it a little easier on you there. Okay, so I'm going to drop this menu out of the way just by tapping right above it. And now we're going to leave this ebook and pop into an audiobook. So if your menus are not on the screen, all you have to do, remember, is tap in the very center and they will reappear. And then to leave ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines, it'll always be a back button up in the top left-hand corner. So I'll go ahead and tap on back. And now we are over on the shelf. So this is where I reorient everyone with that navigation bar. So let's head down to the bottom of the screen here. The first thing I'm going to point out is this bar that's across the right-hand side at the bottom. This is what we call the Now Reading bar. And so it's the last book that you had open in Libby. You can just tap on that bar. It's going to open your book right up to the last spot that you were reading or listening at, and it's easy access. But I'm going to dismiss this for now, just so we can see that full navigation bar at the bottom of the screen. And let's just do a quick review here. So the first thing we did when we started our session was visit the library to browse the library's entire collection. We had the filters at the top. We had the guides, like the kids and teens and magazine guides to help us find certain content. And then we had those general curated collection that the library puts together for us that rotate throughout the year. Then we went over to the search icon, and that's where we looked for something specific, whether it was a title, an author, a magazine, or a series name. We're now over on the shelf, and it looks like a little stack of books and says shelf underneath. It's the fourth icon in the navigation bar. And your shelf is where you're going to find all of your current loans and current holds. So you're actively in your lending period for the books that are your loans, and then you're currently on the wait list for the books that are on your holds. Now, up at the top of my shelf, you'll see if I want to specifically look at my loans or my holds, I can tap those specific filters. Tags are something that we talk about in our deep dive. So if you want to hear about those, you can stay for that. But here on the main page of the shelf, you're seeing all of my current loans displayed by the last time I opened them. So the book that I just borrowed with you is appearing right here at the top of the screen. And right below that, you'll see I have an audiobook that I borrowed about a week ago. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my audiobook here. Now, up at the top of the screen, you'll see your reading progress. So I'm only 2 minutes into this book here since it's just my demo book. I have 16 hours and 37 minutes left to go. Down at the bottom of the screen is where you have the player. So this big old play button is what's going to start that audiobook, and that narrator will begin talking. Now, he's talking on my end. You should just be able to hear me instead. But the one thing that I really like to emphasize in the audiobook experience is that Libby is designed to play audiobooks in the background of your device. And what that means is you can open up Libby, tap on play, start that audiobook, and then you could minimize the Libby app and start online shopping, or you could put your screen to sleep and start doing dishes or gardening. And Libby's going to continue to play your audiobook so that you can multitask. Now, with that in mind, I do like to tell people to make sure when you're done with your listening session, come in and tap on this pause button. That acts as our stop button. So tap on pause, that stops the narrator from talking. And then you don't have to worry about that audiobook playing in the background of your phone all day and losing your place. There have been a couple times on the Digital Bookmobile where I'm showing people audiobooks on their phone and they just turn down the volume and they're like, oh, well, it's done, put it in their pocket. They're going to lose their place if that's the case. So make sure you come in, tap on pause, and then you don't have to worry about having to find your place again in that audiobook when you come back for your next listening session. All right. So you'll probably remember I said back up in the top left-hand corner is how we leave our ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines. So I'm going to tap on back to return to my shelf here. And let's reorient again. So down in the navigation bar, you'll notice it's a new now reading bar. So it's now the audiobook. It's always the last book that you had open in the Libby app that shows up for easy access. I'm going to dismiss that again. Now, your shelf, like I said, is your current loans and your current holds. So again, you're actively in your lending period for your loans. You're currently on the waiting list for your holds. And next door, you'll see a timeline. That is the little clock that says timeline underneath. It's our last icon in the navigation bar. And your timeline is all of the loans and holds and returns that you've ever had in the Libby app. So I want to be very clear and distinct here. Your shelf is current. You can pull off those books off your shelf if we're thinking it in a physical sense. You can open that book up because you're actively in your loan period. Your timeline is your history. This is everything that you've ever put on hold or put on loan. Okay, so we have one more icon to talk about. There's a few things within this icon that we'll talk about, and that is the menu. It is in the very center of the navigation bar. It's those little three lines, and it says menu underneath. And your menu, you can think of as your app settings. So up at the top of the menu, there is a little gray box here. And this is where you're going to find any of your in-app notifications. And notifications are our next topic. So I'm going to explain what in-app notifications are, but they will appear in this gray box. I currently do not have any notifications, and that's why Libby's prompting me to just manage my notifications for now. So I'm going to pop into this menu here to show you how to do that. Now, Libby is going to bring this menu to you the very first time you place a hold. So she'll make it a little bit easier on you here. Now, this is how you can be alerted about important events that happen in Libby, like a hold becoming available or a loan expiring. Up at the top, there are 3 ways that you can receive notifications. By default, the blue line that says notification is what everyone's going to be set to. And this is a push notification. Now, push notifications appear on your device's screen regardless of what app you have open or if your device is asleep. So if an alert comes in or a notification comes in, it will show up on your screen just like a text message would. You could switch that over to a menu badge if you like. That is our in-app notification option. And when I say in-app, that means you have to open up Libby to see it. It's not going to appear outside of the Libby app. It will appear in that gray box that I showed you in the Libby menu. So you do have to open up Libby every single day if you have a book on hold to be able to see that. The last option, of course, is ignore. If it's a specific action that you don't need to be notified about, you have that option to ignore that notification and not receive one at all. Right underneath all of the ways that you can be notified are all of the things that you can be notified about. And I'm just going to talk here today about your hold ready notification. I really recommend to everyone that I talk to about Libby to keep your hold ready notification set to that push notification option. And the reason I recommend that is because when your hold is ready for you to borrow, you will have a 3-day period where that book is sitting in limbo and you are going to be the only person who can take action on it. The 3 actions that you can take when your hold is ready is to either borrow the hold, cancel the hold, or have the hold delivered later. Delivered later is an option that we came up with, knowing that sometimes you get busy and a book that you've waited a while for becomes available and you're not going to have time to read it. What you can do is deliver the title later, and that will keep you at the top of the waiting list and let people skip over you in line until the time period that you set to deliver later ends. So a really good option for you there. Now, in your 3-day limbo period, if you're not borrowing, canceling, or delivering later, Libby will automatically deliver the title later one time as a courtesy, and that will be typically about 7 days. Now, if you don't take action the second time you have that 3-day limbo period after Libby does deliver it later, then Libby's going to cancel your hold. That means you'll have to find a book again, you'll have to rejoin the waiting list, and take it from me, who's done that a couple times, it can really ruin your day when you've waited 6 weeks for a book and then you forget to take action twice and you have to go to the end of the waiting list. Delivering later is always a better option so that you can stay at the top of that waiting list. All right, I'm going to jump off that hill that Joe, he's always like, that's a hill you're going to die on, that hold ready notification. But like I said, it ruins my day. Okay, so right under our notifications here, you'll see your libraries. You can add multiple library cards in Libby. These can be library cards from the same library if you have multiple people in your family who want to share a device and you don't want to fight over the loan or hold limit. You could also add additional library cards from other libraries that you have access to. So you do have to have a valid library card, and it has to be a library that uses Overdrive services. But let's say you live in 2 different states, you have access to 2 different libraries that way. Or here in Ohio, for example, we have several counties that we have access to. So you can add additional library cards from other libraries, and that will open up the amount of books that you have available to you. So you see I have my digital bookmobile library and my digital library. These libraries might purchase different books. They might purchase more copies of a popular title, etc. So adding additional library cards is a nice way to really open up your access to books, and you'll just have to tap on each individual library here in the menu to browse that specific collection. All right, so we'll finish off our getting started session today talking about help and support. And the first thing under our help and support menu I want to show you is this settings menu. Within settings, you can do quite a few different things. You can find your setup code for adding Libby to multiple devices. But what I really want to show you is down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a customize navigation section. And this will be how you can label your icons within your navigation bar. So you'll see I have my labeled icons toggled on. That's why you see the labels underneath those icons here. By default, Libby has these turned off. And so I just like to show this to brand new users of Libby because I really find those label icons helpful when you're just getting started with the app. It helps keep straight in your mind where you need to go. And so I did want to show this off. I also have another video in our PDF that's 30 seconds. If you don't want to find this spot in the recording to see how to do that, you can reference that PDF and you'll get a quicker way to see how to do those steps. Okay, so I'm going to tap on back. I'm going to do this twice because first it's going to take me to my settings, then it's going to take me to that main menu. And the last thing under help and support we'll talk about is how to get some help. So there are a few ways to get help with Libby. The first is asking Joe and I questions for the next 45 minutes or so. You can always ask your library as well. So anytime you have questions, you could go to them. But if you want to find help directly in the Libby app, there are two ways that you can do that. The first is, I call it a self-guided help. So you're asking Libby, who's a computer, a question about the app. Maybe you finished a title before its due date and you want to return it early so the next person in line can get it. You can type in a question, or you can even do a keyword like return and tap on search. And Libby, the computer, is going to try to give you some help articles from Overdrive's help site to answer your question. So returning books is the most relevant here. I'm going to tap on that. And here we see that Libby is giving us the article that tells us how to manually return a book. So we found the answer we're looking for. If you have a more complex question, or maybe Libby is just not giving you the articles that are relevant to the topic that you're searching, or maybe you've run into an issue with the app, you can always come down to Ask Our Support Team. This is the fourth option for finding help. And this is going to connect you with Overdrive technical support specialists. They are living and breathing people, I promise. They're also incredibly friendly, and they can answer any questions that you have about the Libby app, and they can also help you troubleshoot if you run into any deeper issues as well. That will be all done via email. So Libby is going to ask you to put in your email address. I always tell people double, triple check your email address, because if there's a typo in it, that answer bounces back to us and you'll never receive those steps for help. So make sure you double check that email address. And that wraps up our getting started session. Those are all the things that you absolutely need to know to function day to day within the Libby app. I'm going to hand things back over to Joe here, and he's going to get us into some next steps.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. So we are winding down our basics here. Just as a reminder, of course, you can continue to ask us questions, use that Q&A button in the Zoom meeting control, and you can even ask questions anonymously. Starting now, we are going to head into a 5-minute break here, and we'll give you a few extra minutes. If everyone can be back at 10:55, we will get moving into our deep dive then. So feel free to use this time now to get up and stretch, get yourself some more coffee, your tea, your water, and kind of take in the info. Or of course, if you don't have questions or need to get up and move around, you can stick with us and test your knowledge. Try out the mini quiz with us. We've got some questions for you to see what you took away from those basics. At 10:55, we'll head into our deep dive session. I mentioned at the beginning that this is kind of the cherry on top of the sundae, a really great way to enhance your experience using Libby. But we know that we've given you a lot of wonderful things to take in with the basics. So just remember, we're recording our webinar. If after the mini quiz you go, I have taken in all the info I can today, I am done for right now, no worries. I'll give a last call. You can hop off then, or you can decide then if you're going to hop off, and you can always review the deep dive in your own time. You'll get that email about this time tomorrow morning. That will include a link to the full recording. You can skip on ahead to that deep dive. So just some things to keep in mind. But with all of that out of the way, I am going to take us into our mini quiz. So the questions will appear automatically on your screen. Just give your best answer. If you're unsure, you can choose unsure or give it your best guess. These questions are completely anonymous, so no reason to not join in with us. And let's go. In the navigation bar, what do you tap to browse your library's collection? The magnifying glass, the library, the menu, the stack of books, or the clock. So where do you go when you want to browse? And we'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, excellent work, everyone. So keyword there was browse. When you want the feeling of, you don't know exactly what you want the feeling of kind of walking around the library virtually, we will just tap on that library icon. This is going to take us to our digital collection page, which is broken up by our filters up at the top. You can use those to narrow your search, or you could hop into one of the guides your library has created for you. Or you could even hop into one of these curated lists, which is just like the different end caps or displays that the librarians put out in the physical library, recommending titles or subjects. Now, when you know exactly what you want, like a title, author, series name, or the name of a magazine, that's when you want to tap on that magnifying glass and search specifically. Okay, so for question number 2, we're going to still hang out in the navigation bar. What do you tap to find your current loans and holds? So same answers, magnifying glass, library, menu, stack of books, or clock. So where do all the books you're reading or waiting to read live? And I'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent work, everyone. So your current loans and holds live on your shelf. Now to get to your shelf, we'll just tap on that stack of books icon. On your shelf, we have filters up at the top so you can see your current loans or your holds or your tags, which we'll talk about in the next section. And if you scroll through this page, you'll be able to see everything you're currently borrowing from most recent borrow to oldest. If you have a hold that's ready to check out, that will appear at the very top of the shelf, giving you the options to borrow it or have it delivered later. Excellent work, everyone. All right, question number 3. So for question 3, let's dive into an ebook. What are the 3 ways you can customize your ebook's appearance? So select all that apply for me. You can change the text scale or the size of the font, the lighting or the background color of the page, the book design or the font the book is written in, or the language the book is written in. So 3 correct answers. Let me know what you think those are. And we'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, excellent participation, everyone. Got quite a few answers coming through there. We do have, this is kind of our trick question. Looks like we got a couple of you, but honestly, y'all did fantastic. So when you want to change settings within your ebook, like your appearance settings, we'll tap on the center of the screen and tap that A icon to open up the appearance menu. The first thing you can change is that size of the font, so the text scale. Make it as large or as small as you like. Then you can change the lighting, which is that background color. Bright is the default, but you'll find what works best for your eyes. And then the last thing you can change is the book design, which is our way of saying font. So there are 5 pre-made fonts, including the publisher's default, but I like to point out that custom option because it gives you the ability to change things like the spacing between lines of text. So for those of you who answered language, your library does offer titles in a variety of different languages, but this is something you have to choose before you borrow the book, similar to how you have to choose if you want an ebook or an audiobook or a magazine, you have to pick the format. You'd also have to pick the language. And Marissa's got some great tips for us to help us only see the languages we want to be reading in when we're borrowing in Libby. I'm going to sneak one final question in. True or false, titles return automatically on their due date. And I'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, excellent work. So that one is true. Titles return automatically on their due date, so you never have to worry about fines or late fees. But if the book you borrowed was truly just excellent, you couldn't put it down, you borrowed it for 3 weeks, but you read it in 24 hours, and you want to make sure it goes back to the library so the next person on the list can read it, you just need to go to your shelf, and then next to the book you want to return early, tap Manage Loan, and then tap Return Early. From here, you'll be brought to a confirmation screen, and you just tap Return one more time, and that book will go back to your library's collection. So there's that confirmation screen to make sure you don't accidentally return something you wanted to keep, but just a great way to be able to, give someone else a chance in line. Right. Well, excellent work, everyone. You really all did fantastic. I really appreciate the participation. Had so much fun getting to ask you all those questions and seeing your answers come through. But this now takes us to the end of our mini quiz and our break, and this wraps up our getting started section of the morning. So from here, this is that last call I promised. If you are kind of at your max capacity, you've taken in all the info you can for today, you're more than welcome to hop off. You can tap leave in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen to exit the webinar. Remember, when you leave, a survey should pop up in your web browser. Fill that out for us and let us know what you thought. You'll get an email tomorrow morning from Zoom that includes a link to the full recorded webinar so you can review our tips and tricks when you've got time. For those of you sticking around, just a couple quick reminders. Of course, closed captions are enabled and running. If you need to adjust those, tap the button that says CC in your Zoom meeting controls. As for questions, feel free to send those through to Marissa and I at any point. This session will work a little differently. So Marissa's got 4 tips she's going to take us through. After we get through those 4 tips and tricks, we'll have about 10 minutes set aside at the end where we'll have Libby open on the screen and we can show you anything you'd like to see or answer any questions directly within the app. So if you send through a question that I think is something that we would benefit from seeing as a group in Libby, I'll mark it to be shared at the end. So we're not ignoring you, we didn't forget you, but just a heads up, we might be saving your question till the end. So send those through using that Q&A button. All right, so we've got 4 tips and tricks we want to talk about today. We'll start off with magazines, some great ways to navigate through them and what exactly makes them so special. Then we'll talk about filtering and refining lists to help you find the books you like as quickly as possible. Then we'll go into our favorite tip of them all, tags, what they are, how we use them, and some ways you might enjoy them as well. And then we'll wrap up with making and exporting notes and highlights. Great for those of you who have students in school, or if you are a person in book club, or if you're just like Marissa and I and like to make notes in your books. And with that, Marissa, feel free, take us right in to our first tip.
All right, thank you, Joe. Let me let Zoom catch up here. There we go. So tip number one, as Joe mentioned, is all about magazines. Now, we did already cover how to find magazines. So just like our ebooks and audiobooks, you can browse at the library. You have that magazines guide. That's really going to be one of the easiest ways. You can find all of the magazines available at your library. And then you can also search using that magnifying glass. If you know exactly, I want to read Cosmopolitan, you can go and type that in that way. Now, something I want to point out about magazines is that they are what we call simultaneous use. So that means everyone can read the same magazine at the same time. You never have to join a waiting list or wait in line. You're always going to be able to borrow whatever magazine you'd like to enjoy. The second perk of magazines as well is that they do not count against your loan limit. So you have 10 loans that you can have at a time with your library card at this library. And if you borrow 10 ebooks and audiobooks, you'll still be able to borrow magazines after that. It's not going to count against you. So those are two of the reasons that magazines are so special. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up this issue of Popular Mechanics here from my shelf and talk about some things inside the magazine for you. Now, just like our ebooks, we have menus up at the top and the bottom of the magazine. But in magazines, we do have these thumbnails across the bottom of the screens that show you each of the individual pages. Now, you can use these to navigate throughout the magazine if you have incredibly good vision. I, as you can see, wear glasses, so they're a little small for me, but I have certainly seen kids usually who can see what that page is, tap right into it, and skip over to that page if they want. So that is an option for you if you'd like. I'll show you some other easier ways to navigate as well, though. So if you tap in the very center of the screen, that's gonna drop your menus out of the way. And then you can start tapping or swiping just like we did in our ebook to page forward. So this is the second way that you can navigate throughout. Now, the third way you can navigate throughout is by going to the table of contents and tapping on any of those articles that show up on the cover. So maybe I wanted to borrow this magazine because I saw they had an article that was about space, and I love space, so I'm going to tap on Article 6. And Libby has taken me over to that page. So I'm now on page 28, and I skipped over all those articles that I didn't really care about. That's not why I borrowed the magazine. I wanted to learn about space, so I went ahead and jumped over to that article. Now that we're looking at an article, this is the traditional magazine view. And if you're on a larger device like a computer or an iPad Pro, then this traditional magazine view is likely going to be large enough that you'll be able to read all of this text and see the images just fine. I'm on a smaller device. I'm on an iPad mini, so it's a little small for me. And so what you can do if you're on a smaller device is down at the bottom of the screen, you'll have a circle with a page inside, and this is our article view. So if you tap on that, first it will show your images up at the top, but if you scroll down, you'll see that that article is now in this scrolling menu. And that A icon is appearing down at the bottom of the screen. That means we can adjust our reading settings. So this text scale is actually the text scale that I choose in ebooks. And what's really nice is if you have already set up your reading settings in an ebook, they carry over into your magazine experience within that article view. So this is an easier way to read your magazine articles if you're on that smaller device, is by going into that article view. Now, within the article view, you'll have some arrows pointing forward and backward there at the bottom of the screen. This is how you can navigate staying in that article view. So if I tap forward, we're going to run into a couple ads, but then we'll see the next article appear as well. And I'm not having to, exit out of this menu, go page forward, and then tab back into the article view. I'm staying within that article view, making it a little bit easier on us. Now, in the very center, it looks like a little table of contents, some lines there. This is the table of contents within the article view. So again, if you tap on that, you can choose which article you'd like to read. The world's largest magnet. Oh, I already looked at that, but I can jump over into another article here, and again, stay within that article view and making it a little easier. Now, once you are done reading the magazine, if you're in the article view, you'll tap on Done down at the bottom in that right-hand corner. That will take you back to the traditional magazine view there. And then when you want to leave the entire magazine, you just tap on the center of the screen, just like we would in those ebooks, so that we can find that back button. And once you tap back, it'll take you to your shelf and you'll be out of the magazine. So that is a quick tip to get us started, all about magazines, what makes them special within your digital collection, and then also how to navigate throughout. We're now going to move on to tip number 2. And this is all about finding the books that you want to read faster. So we went over to our library and just showed you, the basics of browsing, what those filters mean, what the catalog guides are, and then how to look at those curated collections. Now I want to show you how you can start narrowing down your list so that you can find those books faster that you want to read. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to pop into one of our filters here. I'm going to look at our available now titles. You'll see there's 70,000 within this list. I have spent all day looking at books and placing them on hold, so sometimes you might be in the mood for that. But let's say we're in a hurry in this particular moment. The first thing I'm going to show you is how you can set a filter that is saved and applied to all lists in Libby. And when I use the word saved and applied to all lists, that means no matter how many times you open and close the app, or how many days in between opening Libby go by, you will continue to filter your lists using these filters. And these filters are called preferences. We have a preference for certain things, and so that preference is saved and applied to all lists. So within your preferences, a few of the filters that you can set are language. I would say this is one of the most common filters that I see people set, and it's one that I do as well. So much to my high school French teacher's dismay, I retained very little French that she taught us. And so I really only speak English. I could probably get away with a few French children's books, but generally I want to read English titles. I'm not going to be able to read books that are written in Spanish or Chinese or Japanese, anything like that. And so on my personal device, I have an English preference set. And what that means is now moving forward, anytime I type in a search term or I'm browsing a curated collection, only English titles are going to appear. And that way I don't accidentally borrow a book that's written in another language. Now, another popular filter preference that I see is format. You know, some people prefer the ebook experience. They want to read with their eyes. Others prefer the audiobook experience so they can listen with their ears. If you are particular about the format that you want to enjoy, you want to always be reading or always be listening, then you could set one of the preferences for format, and that way you're only seeing the format that you enjoy when you're searching and you're browsing. I like both, so I'm going to keep it as any for now. And then the last one I'll talk about that is popular is audience. So when I'm looking for a book right now, as is, I'm seeing everything. That means I'm seeing juvenile content all the way up to mature content. If you have, kiddos that use your device, maybe you're going over to the grandkids, visiting them, they want to play on your device and look for books or something like that, you can go ahead and set some preferences for juvenile or young adult. That way they're only seeing age-appropriate content when they're searching and browsing, and they're not going to come across 50 Shades of Grey. So once you set your preferences, I'm going to stick with just my English preference here. I'm just going to scroll down a tiny bit here, and I'm going to apply. So remember to do this if you're on a smaller device, especially an iPad mini or a phone. You'll have to make sure you're scrolling down so you can see apply preferences. And you'll know that you've applied those preferences because there will be a number indicator right next to that preferences button. So I have my English preference set. That's one preference that is showing there next to the preferences button. So this is how you can set, like I said, an app-wide filter that is saved and applied to all lists, no matter how many times you open and close Libby or how many days go in between your reading or listening sessions. Now, the second part of this tip is to show you how to temporarily refine your searches. So for this, I'm just going to give a little prompt here. We know we're looking at about 79,000 titles. Now, let's pretend my mom and I are going to go on a road trip tomorrow, and I need to find a book to borrow for us to enjoy on our road trip. So I'm going to be looking for an audiobook. Can't read and drive quite yet. We are going to look for a mystery historical fiction. That's my mom's favorite. So that's how we're going to browse by subject. And then the last thing I'm going to, the last filter I'll place is making sure that we're seeing the newest titles, a new release. My mom is an avid reader, so she's probably read all the old stuff. So audiobook, mystery historical fiction, and a new release are the three criteria I'm going to use to start narrowing this list down from 79,000 titles. And to do that, I'm going to come over to refine. It is directly across from preferences, and you'll actually notice that it's also showing very similar, or in some cases, exact categories that we saw in preferences. But I want to be very clear. Preferences stick and stay. They continue to filter your lists, even if you close and open Libby again. Refining is temporary. That's for the list that you're looking at right at that moment. And then the next time you go to look for a book, it's going to revert back to showing you everything. So for this prompt, first, we're going to change format. So I want an audiobook for our road trip. We don't have a Tesla. There we go. I've narrowed that down to 2,200 audiobooks already. I'm going to come back over to refine. And now I'm going to select my subject. So I told you my mom loves a mystery historical fiction book. So first we're going to tap on mystery here. We've narrowed that down to 2,900, but we're only looking at mystery titles right now. And my mom likes mystery historical fiction. So I'm going to come back to subject, and I'm going to select historical fiction. And now that number's dropped to 221. And you might be thinking, if you added a second subject, shouldn't that number grow instead of shrink? And the reason I show the double subject filter is to let you know that you can find niche subjects. So the books that I'm looking at right now in this list are not mystery or historical fiction. They are mystery books that are also historical fiction. So you're finding those niche subjects this way. And I always tell people between 2 and 4 subjects is about as many filters as you can apply for subjects before Libby starts really giving you 1 result or 0 results back. And that's because there's not very many books in the world that are like comedy, horror, historical fiction, mystery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So between 2 and 4 is generally going to be that sweet spot there. Now, we've got our list down to a reasonable number. 212 is a lot better than 79,000, but I want the newest releases to be up at the top of this list. So I'm going to come back to refine one more time. And I'm going to come down to sort by. Right now, I'm sorting by popularity. Instead, I'm going to sort by release date. And that's going to make it so those newest titles show up at the top of the list. And then as we make our way down the list, those titles will get older and older. And again, we started out with 79,000. We've narrowed it down to 221. And that is how you can filter and refine your searches to find the books that you like faster. So that was tip number 2. I'm actually going to stay on this page here for tip number 3. And tip number 3 is all about tags. Tags are a way that you can organize books in Libby, keep track of books in Libby, and create your own lists. Now, this is one of the differences between the Overdrive app and the Libby app. So if you are an Overdrive user and you want to know some of the differences between both apps, this is one of them. Overdrive gives you a wish list and a history. And so you're limited to those 2 lists there. In Libby, with tags, you can create as many lists as you'd like, and you can name those lists whatever you like. So you can really get creative with the lists that you make in Libby. One of the creative ways that I use tags in Libby is to keep track of gifts that I'm going to buy for the readers in my life. My father-in-law is an avid reader. Books are literally the only gift that I can give him that I know is going to get use. Everything else sits in a corner. And so I'm constantly challenged with finding books that fit into what he likes. And so a way I make it easier on myself is as I'm looking for my own books in Libby throughout the year, I will find something he likes in a list that I'm looking at, tag it with his name, and then when Christmas rolls around, I can open that tag up at the bookstore, buy that book, and it makes it really nice and fast when the holidays roll around. So you can get and create as many lists as you'd like and use them in whatever creative ways you can find. So let's go ahead and show you how to tag titles. And then I'll also show you how you can export those tags out of the app if you want to share a list of books that you maybe want to read for book club with your book club. You can do that as well. So let's say I'm looking at this list as I am browsing for my Mom and I's road trip book, and I come across Clark and Division. And this book looks good. but maybe not exactly fitting for the road trip. Maybe my mom's read it already and I haven't, so I want to read it later. What I'll do is tap on tag. And from here, we can create a new tag. So this will start a new list, or we could just tap on any of our existing tags here to add it to one of those. Now, regular tags don't have any special abilities. They're just tags that you create to stay organized. But right below that, you'll see smart tags, and these do have special abilities. The first one that you see here, that is the borrowed smart tag. It looks like a little receipt, so it's a red receipt. And that is a tag that will automatically apply to any books that you borrow in the Libby app. I'll show you here in a second why I love this tag. I'll also show you how to delete it if you don't want Libby auto tagging your books for you. The next one that you see is the Notify Me magazine tag. The Notify Me tag is specific to magazines currently. And what the Notify Me tag does is it gives you a notification for any of the magazines that you tag with that Notify Me tag when a new issue becomes available at your library. So if you're an avid reader of HGTV and you don't want to continually go back and look and search for HGTV to see if new issues came out, you can tag it with your Notify Me tag, and then Libby will start alerting you when new issues come out. Now, I'm going to mute for a second because I need to clear my throat and take a drink of water. I've been talking a lot this morning, so one moment. All right, didn't want to do that in your ears. Okay, so smart tags, special abilities, regular tags just for organization's sake. I'm going to go ahead and create a new tag here and just show you the process of that. So first we can name our tag. Let's say I want to listen to this on the beach. I'm going to tag it as Beach Reads. And I could add a description. I know what Beach Reads means, but if you want to like give a little sentence about what that tag list is, you certainly can do that. And then once you are done, you tap on Done. And now you'll see that that tag has appeared next to the jacket cover of Clark and Division. And we're still looking at a list as we're browsing that library. And so this is one of the reasons I love tags so much, because as we scroll through this list, let's say I'm looking for that book for my mom and I come across The Devil in the Dark Water, and I see that borrowed smart tag. I guarantee you prior to this tag existing, I probably would have listened to the sample. I probably would have read the first 50 pages of the book if it was an ebook before I had that memory spark that I had read it in the past. So if you are someone who reads a lot, and sometimes you forget what you read just based on the title and the jacket cover, this smart tag for borrowed books can come in handy, letting you know just at a quick glance, read that already. I'm going to skip right over it while I'm looking for a book to borrow. Now, let's say I come across They Went Left. Well, that has TBR, my TBR tag, to be read. That's my wish list. So maybe I'm just going to go ahead and borrow this book right away since I know that I've expressed interest in it and in the past. I added it to my wish list. I will save a little bit of time here. So tags showing up in your searching and browsing can be quite handy. Now, I'm also going to show you how you can look at your tags as a list. So let's go over to the shelf. Remember, it's that fourth icon. And up at the top of the screen, you'll have your tag filter. So I have 7 tags created. If I tap on tags here, I can see all of, I need to clear my throat again, 1 second. All right, I apologize. All this talking is getting to me. So we can tap into any of these individual lists here if I want to look at that particular list. So my wish list by To Be Read has 44 titles. Let's go ahead and tap into this. Now, if I didn't want to search or browse for a book and I'm like, I want to find a book in a hurry, I could just go into my wish list and borrow any of these books here if they're available. So over on the right-hand side, you'll see either a library card with a plus sign or a calendar with a clock. This means it's on hold. This means it's currently available to borrow. Regardless of what icon it is, you can tap on that icon. And what's really nice is that you can borrow it or place a hold directly from your tag list. Or down at the bottom, you can see all of the library cards that you have in Libby, and Libby will tell you how many copies are available at each of your library. So for this example, I have 1 of 1 copies available at the library I'm browsing currently, but my second library doesn't even own a copy of this book. So that's why it's giving me this little grayed out icon. So if you're someone with multiple library cards, this little icon truly can come in handy. And you'll see this icon appear pretty much everywhere in the app. You'll see it when you're searching and browsing. You'll see it in your tags. So it really can come quite handy. Up at the top of your tag list, you'll have an actions button. And if you tap on actions, you can rename or delete your tag. I promised I'd show that off in case you want to delete anything that's auto tagging your books. And then in the center, you'll also see the option to export your tags. So this will export your tags out of the Libby app so that you can share them. I'll tap on export tag here to show you how. Libby does have a few different options for file types depending on how you want to use that tag. So HTML is going to be sharing it on a web page here, but I'm going to do that option just as an example. So I'll tap on table here, and you can see down at the bottom of my data export page are all the books that I've tagged on my wish list. Now, up at the top in the right-hand corner on iOS devices, you'll have your share button. And this share button will allow you to send this book out in a text message. You could do it on an email as well. Or if you scroll down just a tiny bit, then you can print. So the share button's location may move depending on what device you're on or what web browser Libby's data export page opens up into. But just know you just got to find the share button and you'll have those options for messaging, mailing, or printing. Okay. So that is the last thing I'll say about tips. I truly could talk about, or tags, I mean, not tips. We still have one more tip. I could talk about tags all day long. It's my favorite feature in Libby, but I'll stop myself there so that you can have your last tip of the day, which is notes and highlights. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. And anytime you want to highlight a passage in a book, what you're going to do is start at the very beginning of the passage. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this second paragraph here. I'm moving my mouse slightly to the left so that you can see as I hold my finger on the word who, it turns blue. I say hold your finger on the word because if you tap, it's going to turn the page. So keep your finger on the screen as soon as it connects with the screen, and then start dragging your finger across the screen until the entire passage turns blue. Then you can lift your finger up off the screen, and when you do, your highlight option will appear. You can even choose some different colors here to stay organized. Let's go pink. And now that my highlight is in place, to add a note to it, all we have to do is tap on the highlight itself, and our note menu will drop down, and we can just type in here whatever we would like. For the sake of demonstration, I'll say this is a note, but you can do full paragraphs if you wanted to. I have done full paragraphs, so you're not limited to just a few words. And then I'm going to tap right below the menu to drop it off the screen. And let's start paging forward. So let's say I now want to view a note or highlight that I've made in the beginning of the book. What we're going to do is tap on the center of the screen, and then up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see it's like 3 bookmarks sitting in a row. You can tap on those bookmarks, and your full list of all the notes and highlights that you've made will drop down. So let's say I want to reference this highlight about Mr. Bingley in chapter 3. I'll just go ahead and tap on that highlight, and I see that highlight that I made. If I want to see the note, I just have to tap on the highlight and the note drops down. Now, sometimes you're going to make notes and highlights in a book, and then before you need those notes and highlights, the book will return to the library. Maybe there's a waiting list on the book, so you can't borrow it again to view the notes and highlights this way. There are 2 different ways in Libby that you can still reference your notes and highlights, even if a title's returned to the library. So we'll finish off our tips and tricks showing you how to do that. I'm going to tap in the center of the screen or slightly above so I don't tap my highlight instead. And I'm going to leave this ebook. Now, when you want to find your notes and highlights for a book that you've borrowed in the past, you're going to go to the details page of that book. And we did that in our Getting Started session, but as a refresher, let's go over how to do that. We'll first tap on search. We know exactly what book we're looking for at this particular moment. So I'm going to type in the guest list, and I'm going to tap on search. So this is another reason I love that borrowed smart tag, is because I know I've borrowed this book in the past, so this is definitely the book that I made notes and highlights in. I'm going to go ahead and tap on the jacket cover to view the details page. Now, when you've borrowed a book in Libby, on the details page, you will have a reading journey. It just shows every action that you've ever taken with that book. And on the reading journey, the first way you can find your notes and highlights is by going to Actions and exporting your reading data. So I just showed you the steps to export your tags. Exporting your reading data will instead export your notes and highlights. So if you want to send your notes and highlights in an email or print them out, you can do that. If that's just like a step too far, you just wanted to quickly reference a note, you can scroll down on your reading journey and you'll see your highlights listed out under the timeline for the title. And you just have to tap on each individual highlight there, which will show you the passage that you highlighted, and then your note will appear in quotations directly underneath. So that is tip number 4, our last tip of the day, how to make notes and highlights, and then how you can access those notes and highlights even after a title has returned to the library. So I'm going to pass things back over to Joe. Actually, Joe, I had one question to answer in our Q&A. So we are in our Q&A session now. If you have any questions, feel free to put those in the Q&A. I just wanted to point out, because I looked up why that first search I did in our Getting Started session wasn't working. And it's a good reason to, the answer is something that's nice to share with you. So when libraries purchase content, there's a couple different ways that they can purchase content, and one of those ways is by time period. So sometimes they'll buy a book for 2 years, and then after 2 years, that book will then leave the collection until they purchase it again. And so that's what happened to the book I was searching for. Our 2-year period hit right before our session started, so that book left the collection. And I just wanted to share that so that if 1 week you're searching for a book and it shows up, and then the next week you go back and you can't find it anywhere, it's likely that either the time ran out on the license or that title, or the other option would be the number of checkouts, maybe 36 checkouts that book allows before it disappears. That could be an option as well. So I just wanted to share that with you so that if that ever happens to you, you know what likely went wrong. Okay, Joe, I'll let you take it over for Q&A now.
Sure. So that wraps up our deep dive portion. If you have any questions, I know we are over time, but Marissa and I will stay on until the any open questions are answered. So please feel free to send those through now, and we will get to any questions that come in. And now, while your time with us is almost up, remember you can always ask questions directly in the Libby app to our tech support team by going to the menu in the center of the navigation bar. And then underneath help and support, this is right where we left it off. Underneath help and support, tapping on get some help. And then you can use that search bar up at the top to type out keywords, short phrases, or even your full question. Maybe you wanted a little more info than Marissa gave on tags. I don't know if there is more info than what Marissa gave on tags, but you type that in, hit search in your keyboard, and then Libby will provide some suggested help articles. If none of these match what you're looking for, you can come down and tap on Ask Our Support Team, and this will allow you to go right from there and type in your question, whether you have a problem, maybe something isn't working the way you're expecting, if you have a question, or even if that's just wanting more general information on your question, or of course you can provide a suggestion for the future. So if there is a feature you'd like to see, submit that to our folks.
So that did remind me of another just quick tip, because you're seeing it happen live. If you ever tap on an icon and it's not showing you the page that you were expecting, clearly my dog just came out, so sorry that my husband must have let her out. I'm her favorite person, so she's like, get me in here. If you tap on an icon and it's not the page you were expecting, like right now, it's probably going to take me to that reading journey for the book that I searched for, you can double tap the icon instead, and it will take you to the main page, the home page of that icon, if you will. So if I tap on menu once now, it's going to take me to the finding tech support. Double tapping it takes me back to the home page. So a nice little tip there as well if you ever get lost.
Definitely super important to be able to always jump right back to where you need to be. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming through now. So I'll just pop over to this screen. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our Learning Libby with the Experts webinar. The question and answers will be included in the recording. You'll be able to download those questions and the answers we provided if you're interested in doing that. So if you were, kind of going through with us as I was answering questions in the background, maybe you didn't get through all of them, or you'd like to see something again, you will have access to that in the recording. So you'll get an email tomorrow morning from Zoom that includes a link to that recording, as well as a link to our Getting Started with Libby PDF that covers short video clips of everything we covered in the basics half of the morning. Of course, remember, you can always reach out to our tech support team. They're available 24/7. And then help us grow and expand our presentation by filling out the survey that will appear when I end the webinar. I think that's everything we've got to cover. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and happy
Happy
reading.
reading.